ॐ पूर्णमदः पूर्णमिदं पूर्णात् पूर्णमुदच्यते पूर्णस्य पूर्णमादाय पूर्णमेवावशिष्यते। ॐ शान्तिः शान्तिः शान्तिः। श्री स्वामीनारायण भगवाननी जय। अक्षर पुरुषोत्तम महाराजनी जय। राधा कृष्ण देवनी जय। सियावर रामचंद्र भगवाननी जय। गुरु हरि प्रमुख स्वामी महाराजनी जय। In the divine presence of Bhagavan Swaminarayan and the equally divine presence of my Guru Hari Pramukh Swami Maharaj, in the revered presence of saints whom I deeply respect, guests and dignitaries, some of the people who have become so close to me, friends like Devang, and so many people who have met us at different occasions in time. First of all, my heart reaches out to the people who have not found a seat in this auditorium, because they have found a seat in the heart of Krishna. Even knowing they would not find a seat and to come, God responds and gives His grace to people who try. Secondly, I bow down to all the scholars, thinkers and saints, some of them who have spoken earlier and some who will speak later. They are all great thinkers who have offered us great knowledge and wisdom on this beautiful occasion, and I really congratulate AMA for trying and celebrating Janmashtami in such a wonderful way. But talking about wisdom and sharing wisdom, I want to tell you that wisdom is not a monopoly of one people, nor one place, nor one point in history. I believe that you can get wisdom from anywhere, at any place, through anyone, if you are willing. I want to share something I experienced last year when I was in the US. And this experience perhaps is exclusive to the US. It's not that it may not happen anywhere, but we were visiting one of the temples that Pramukh Swami Maharaj is creating. Incidentally, for your information, Swami has created more than 827 mandirs around the world. LA happened to have one. There we are creating a temple exactly on the epicenter, Chino Hills. And it's a risk. But it's going to be a temple on isolators. Titanium isolators, which will make sure that even if it's an earthquake and there is a shearing shift horizontally of almost a foot, still the shikhar would remain stable. We were visiting that place, and after finishing everything, we went back to the airport. And just imagine, we checked in, cleared the security, baggages were put in, and when we went right down to the news, and we arrived at the news, and there was an announcement that the flight has been delayed by 4 hours, exclusive in America. The flight has been delayed by 4 hours. And here's two of us sadhus, Swaminarayan sadhus. There's a lot of maryada. It was getting increasingly embarrassing. We didn't have somebody to turn to, and it was all strange. So I phoned one of our devotees and said, can we come out? He said, Swami, this is an international flight, and once you've checked in and secured in everything, it's impossible, you have to wait. I was wondering what I would do, and there while I was sitting, I saw an African American security officer. He was both fat and friendly. And before I talked to him, he approached me. He said, hey, you guys, where are you from? I said, India. He said, are you Hindus? I said, yes. He said, Hinduism, is that the religion where you come back on this earth again and again and again and again? I said, I'm afraid so. And he said, well, that's pretty cool. I want to come back on this earth again and again and again and again. And before I could talk back to him, he turned to me, imagine, he turned to me and said, have you ever thought that perhaps this is the most positive thought any religion has given to this world? Hinduism gives man many lives to make himself better. Hinduism gives many opportunities to us to improve ourselves. I learned from him in 3 minutes what I didn't in 30 years as a sadhu. We have always thought that Janma Maran is some form of punishment, but he told me that Janma Maran is an opportunity to change yourself and transform yourself. And then slowly I asked him, I said, sir, he said, what? I said, can we just go out and come back again? It is okay for Hindus, let's go and come back again. We did it officially with a pass. We said, let's go and come back again. But what I want to tell you here, which is very important, that there is always a different way of looking at the same thing. Don't get stuck. Don't straitjacket yourself. Don't lock the doors and bolt yourself in. Windows are there to be opened. The breeze is there to be felt. Open your mind and you will find a different way. So this evening when we have gathered to talk about Lord Krishna, a visionary leader, let us explore that is there a way where we can try and see the same Lord Krishna whom we worship for 5,000 years, whom we adore, whose praises we sing. Is there a way of looking at the same person or same being in a different light? Perhaps there is. And perhaps he may inspire us differently. So talking about Krishna, trying to find some difference, I want to just ask you very frankly that suppose at the end of this speech I make an announcement that I have two murtis, two idols, two murtis, one of Lord Krishna and one of Kans. And you are supposed to take any one murti back home. Which one would that be? Don't look too puzzled. Oh, surely there's not a big choice, right? Come on. I think we are unanimous? Or majority? Sorry, I think we live in India because there's not a majority for anything. We live in a place where we have hung parliaments. And we have decided that it would be hung. And one of our favorite pastimes is hanging around. Either we hang around somebody else's marriages, or outside colleges, around a pawn shop, inside a film theater, outside a mandir, and never in the assembly hall. We have a habit of maybe hanging around, but still I think in this question, the answer would be unanimous. We would all take who? Krishna. Because he represents virtues and Kans is viciousness. Krishna is divine, Kans is demon. Krishna is saintly, Kans is a sinner. We know that there is good and divinity and there is evil. So there is not much of a choice, and we surely would go for Krishna. But if the announcement has an attachment, now in emails you have attachments, okay? So if the announcement has an attachment and we say that the murti of Krishna is made of wood and the murti of Kans is made of 24 karat gold, then who would you take home? You say Janmashtami is just over. And you will tell me that, Swami, I'm a goldsmith, I'll take Krishna, a Kans, and I'll turn him into Krishna. And if you're a Swaminarayan devotee, you'll say, Swami, let me take Kans, and I will give 10% of Kans in Dharmada. But for God's sake, let me take Kans. Imagine we love Krishna, we worship Him, we adore Him, we are all gathered here to talk about Him, to fortify our faith, and yet a little self-interest shakes our loyalty. We must examine that we live in a world where we are constantly told that followers must be loyal to leaders, okay? We are constantly reminded that people should be loyal to their party. People should be loyal to their company or corporation. We should be loyal to our country. So technically, followers should be loyal to their leaders. But I want to tell you that Krishna was one leader who was loyal to his followers. What the world needs today is not loyal followers, but I think it needs loyal leaders. Look at the loyalty of Lord Krishna. Only He can be a leader who is loyal. That's the first most important, because leaders demand loyalty. So the first virtue for any leader must be loyal. Are you loyal to your company, corporation, to your family, to your country, the values you represent? Look at Lord Krishna. I'll take you into the moment of Draupadi Swayamvar. When Draupadi Swayamvar was arranged and everything was staged, everything was beautifully decorated, and the scene and the aroma and the atmosphere was all done. Draupadi ji was all decked up, she was ready and she was ornamented. When she walked into the Swayamvar, Vyasa writes that all the kings who had come to win her hand were all glued, fixed, were pining for Draupadi, and their vision were fixed and totally gravitated towards Draupadi. In the Mahabharata, the description starts, they start describing one king after another king. They start with Duryodhan, then Shishupal, then starts with, Karna, and so many other kings, all listed. Krishna's name appears 54th. Look at the skill of Vyas. The actor, the main hero, comes in at 54th. Quietly. Not only that, when Krishna's name comes in, everybody is looking at Draupadi. Krishna is searching for Arjun in the form of Brahmins. When he discovers Arjun, Krishna nudges Balram and says, Esho Arjuno, Natram Vicharyam Asti, Yadyasmi, Sankarshana Vasudevaha. He says, hey Sankarshan, that is Arjun. He's not worried about Draupadi. He said, that is Arjun. Just as I am Krishna, he is Arjuna. And from that day onwards, Krishna never let his protective eye wander away from Arjun. Look at the loyalty of a leader. Not only he protects his flock, not only he guides, he finds himself responsible right till the end. A leader who must be loyal, we learn from Lord Krishna. But such loyalty was not just contained to that age. I want to express to you that loyalty to Lord Krishna, who is a leader, has the power to change the mind of an empire. Loyalty. Whether you are loyal to the image, whether you are loyal to the murti, whether you are loyal to the name, the mantra, or whether you are loyal to one ideal of Krishna, you don't have to believe him as God. One ideal of Krishna, if you are loyal, it has the power to change the mind of an empire. You're probably wondering, what am I saying? You know, this incident is somewhere after the First World War. A very bright man in Britain, his name was Ronald Henry Nixon. At a young age, he decided to join the RAF. He became a pilot in the First World War. While he was doing the piloting and the First World War was happening, he took his squadron up in the air and he was about to turn left. But his plane turned right and it landed back and the whole squadron came back. When the squadron came back, there was a huge applaud on the airfield. All the people, the maintenance, other RAF people came down and thanked him. They thanked Ronald Nixon. And they said, fantastic, wonderful, you are visionary. You could visualize that there was a whole squadron of German bombers to the left. If you had taken to the left, it would have been sure suicide and you would have died. So great thinking, you came back to the right. You know? Ronald Nixon started thinking that while everybody congratulated me, everybody praised me, I had a heart. I started thinking that I was deliberately trying to take the plane to the left and it veered on the right on its own. Only sometimes you know what's the truth, you know. We have a habit of accepting everything. And we have a habit of exaggerating everything. We have a habit of begging for credit, you know. You know, sometimes if you're working very late and very hard, and you've gone to bed at 1, and people come up to you and said, so you stayed up till 1? You said, no, around 2. We want to milk credit. And when you wake up in the morning and you're woken up at 6, and somebody says, oh, you woke up at 6? You said, no, I was awake by 5. Look at our nature. We want to make sure that we milk credit. Here is Nixon, Ronald Nixon. He says that I knew that the plane veered to the right on its own, so there must have been other force which was working against my force. He went out in search for that force. Before that, he became a professor at Cambridge. No ordinary mind. He was a thinker. He became a professor. Then in search, he came to India. Around 1927, he decided in India to become a sadhu. His name became Yogi Krishna Prem. Imagine in the time when Britain's empire was bright. If now you find a British guy coming to be a sadhu, you know, you'll think, okay, so what big deal. When England was an empire, India was a slave. When the culture of England and the etiquette, all the system was considered high, ours was considered as natives. You get a white man who is a Cambridge professor, who served his country. He's not just a hitchhiker who came down and sat down on the shores of Rishikesh. So he became a sadhu, and once he was traveling in a train. While he was traveling in a train, he was sitting with other Indians in a very third-class rated compartment. One British woman, when England was ruling India, aristocratic, rich, snobbish woman, she climbed up the train. When she looked at a white man in orange clothes sitting with the natives, she became shocked and horrified. She stopped and he said, hey, you, come to our compartment. He says, madam, I'm fine, safe. She said, but you know, who are you? He said, I'm a yogi. She lost her cool. She said, my God, what has India given you that you left England? You should have studied. He writes that he didn't tell her that he was a professor at Cambridge. You should have studied. England offers you the future. England is an empire. This is a slave nation. Why have you betrayed your own country, your culture? You renegade. These are the words she used. You renegade. Why have you betrayed? Why have you treated your country and forsaken your culture so rudely and taken up and sitting with the natives? What has India given you? When she went on and on, slowly Yogi Krishna Prem put his hand in a small bag he was carrying. He lifted from that bag a murti of Krishna and he said, Madam, India has given me Krishna. Can England give me Krishna? He said, can the empire produce one person like Lord Krishna? India has given me gold dust. If a total stranger, if a man from the empire, even after thousands of years, if his loyalty towards Krishna, even a murti, can change the mindscape of his mind, then I believe Krishna is still a leader amongst us even right now. It depends how we approach the entire situation. And such loyalty. And if we understand that if we want to get closer, we must express that he was a leader in a different sense. Before we begin, we must know that there were certain things about Lord Krishna that makes him a leader by default. You know, the person who was responsible for winning the Second World War, one of the persons, his name was General Eisenhower. After the Second World War, when he started taking leadership classes, he used to explain leadership in a very simple way with a piece of string. General Eisenhower would take a string, he would put a string on the table, and then would explain to the people that if you pull it, it will go wherever you wish. If you push it, it will go nowhere. So he said, people are like a string. If you pull them, they'll go wherever you wish. But if you push them, they will crowd and create chaos. So he said, you must pull people to lead them. And did anybody know that the name Krishna, Karshati iti Krishna, means the person who pulls? By default, he's a leader. The person who pulls, who draws, who attracts. And by default, Krishna, he could attract people, whether it's through his flute, through his intelligence, through his actions, through his love, through his entire way of making people understand. He drew people naturally. But then again, just drawing and attracting people does not make you a leader. Because John Quincy Adams, he writes that a real leader, he has to dream more. He has to see more. He has to do more. And he has to be more. If you want to be a leader, and if you are a leader, then definitely you have to be more than the people around you. And look at Lord Krishna. You know, he dreamt more. Nobody in Mathura could have ever dreamt that the reign of Kansa could end. He was a dictator. He was a total, let's say, an autocratic dictator that saw nothing else. He terrorized the area. Nobody could dream that Kans could be defeated. Only Krishna dreamt, and he did it. And we know that he dreamt more. Even in the waters of Yamuna, we all know these are simple stories, but the messages are very important. The waters of Yamuna were beautiful, but no citizens ever touched them or drank the waters because they thought they were poisonous. Why? Kalia. The multi-headed serpent, he lived in the waters, and nobody would touch them, cross them, or nobody would drink the water. Remember I said, Krishna dreamt more and freed the people from Kans. Here, on the pretext of getting a bowl, Krishna dived into the water. The waters which people would not even touch. He dived into the waters and relieved the people from the fear of Kalia. He did more. He just didn't dream more, but he did more. And you know, when you set people free from fear, you help them see more. I think all of you must agree. Most of our vision is clouded not because of cataracts, but because of fear. You get blind people at the age of 20 when they have to sit exams. This is Swami kai lakhayud nahi, but how? Because fear. So what Krishna did was remove the fear. When he removed the fear, people could see more. You know, in the times, at that time, in Lord Krishna's times, whenever there were rains, all the local people would worship Indra. And that's where their worship would end. Krishna made them see more. He said, the lineage of divinity doesn't end with Indra. There is Paramatma even beyond Indra. He raised the vision of the people higher and higher beyond Indra and onto the image of God. I believe to show people and take them to that level means he saw more and he made people see more. But the most important, Krishna, like you said, the leader has to dream more, has to see more, has to do more, and has to be more. You know, the first three things you could do with marketing. But be more you can't. That is, you need the stuff in you. You know, the first three things can be managed. But the fourth can't be managed. You would see through people. When Krishna, before the war, he wanted to avoid the war. And when he went down to Duryodhana and explaining to him that don't have a war, there will be destruction, you will die, there will be a lot of evil, don't have a war. And Duryodhana kept saying, I want a war, want a war, want a war. And when this was happening, Krishna showed Duryodhana his first Vishwarup. He said, look, I am more than all the people put together. Look at me, all of you exist in me. He showed Duryodhana that anything that you dream of, right from the beginning to the end of the universe, it exists in me. I am life, I am death, I am everything in the middle. When he told him that he is more, still Duryodhana didn't agree. So first he shows the Vishwaswarup to stop the war. But when the war was inevitable and Arjun didn't want to fight, what did he show him? Vishwarup again. And this time he was telling Arjun, fight the war. This is the leader. He doesn't have one principle, he has the principle to win that moment. If you sit with just one simple principle and then stick to it, you won't be a leader who makes progress. Krishna showed the Vishwaswarup first to stop the war, and when war was inevitable, he said, see, I am more than you, fight the war. So in all four occasions we find that Lord Krishna was definitely more than anybody put together. And we must accept and understand that his leadership had a lot of huge difference. When we find that out, we know that the way he worked was different. You know, these were perhaps the routine ideas that a leader builds teams, strategizes, the leader motivates, the leader does so many different things. But there are three ideas which I want to share this evening, and which I feel that will make us feel that Krishna was far different than any leader that we know. One of the idea is, Lord Krishna teaches all of us across the ages one thing, that you don't need a title to be a leader. Okay? The first thing he teaches us, you don't need a title to be a leader. You know, most of the time if somebody is selected, first thing we ask, okay, what is my position? We live in an age where titles, credit cards, visiting cards, boards mean a lot to us. Okay? So here he teaches us that you don't need a title to be a leader. What was Lord Krishna's title in the Mahabharata war? Was he number 1? Was he number 2? At least he can't be amongst the 5 because they were the Pandavas. He was not any of them. Was he number 6, 7, 8, 9? Because they were all kings. Krishna's title was, he was a charioteer, Sarathi of Arjun. Imagine, can any of you imagine if somebody tells you that Ratan Tata's chauffeur is running the entire Tata group? Would you believe it? You can't. But here in the Mahabharata war we see that Krishna was a charioteer, technically a chauffeur. He was calling all the shots. He was influencing. He himself was taking the decisions and helped things appear. He was being like a leader who was invisible and still there. So he teaches us that you don't need a title to be a leader. The second thing amongst that, he teaches us that, normally if somebody is appointed and you tell him that, okay, you are vice president, the second question will come, Mukesh Bhai, which you teach at the AMA. Okay? The second things will come that would say, okay, what is my scope? And the third thing, what are my resources? How many people? What's the budget? What is my scope? What's my access? Okay? Then I can devise a plan and a strategy, and then I can give you the result. Or I can fabricate the result. Two things. So, because statistics are wonderful things. But anyway, so he would say, so what would be our scope? These are the questions a modern leader asks. Krishna never asked that. He's a charioteer, okay? No name, no title. Resources, my God, think of it. He actually gave up all his resources. He had an army. He could have said, my army won't fight. But you know what he did? He gave the army to the opponents. Oh, what foolishness. If you give all your men to the competitor, people are guarding the smallest information. Okay? And if you give all your information, all your men to the competitor, and still you win the war, that is Krishna. He did not take a title. He did not take any resources. Instead, he gave all his resources to the Kauravas. Look at the way Krishna works. Climax. He pledged that he would not touch a weapon. Arey, you are not writing about war, you are fighting a war. In AMA, we could talk about war, how India should win. But guns and bullets are different. I know that's a different story. But here, Lord Krishna says he would not touch a weapon. He actually proved to the world that in the absence of title, in the absence of all resources, if you are resourceful, you are useful. In the absence of title, in the absence of resources, if you are resourceful, you are useful. And that's what he did. He made sure, and I would call this first type of leadership would be nonetheless leadership. Nonetheless leadership. If you don't have a title, fine. If you don't have resources, fine. If you don't have anybody to help you, you are still a leader. If you decide you want to lead, you can still lead. And it's very important. Nowadays, so many people are stuck. Stuck? I was in America this time. This, what I'm telling you, doesn't mean I believe in this. But I think I must share with you. So this is a waiver. Okay? I was in America this time, and there were some people they were discussing. And they said, they were discussing President Bush, and they said, or any leader. So one guy suddenly said, oh, he's a post turtle. So the farmer asked, I said, what do you mean by a post turtle? He said, look, if you are going in a farm which is totally empty, a farm which is totally empty, in the middle of the farm you see a post which is 6 feet tall. And on top of that post, if you see a turtle, the first question you ask, how did he get there? Go home and think. The first question you ask, my God, how did he get there? The second question you ask, what does he do there? The third question you ask is, what can he do there? And the fourth question you ask, the only way I can help him is to bring him down. So there is a type of leaders who are so dependent on post. They are known as post turtles. Those leaders who are just dependent on post, either through family connection they're a leader, either through somebody's death they are leaders by default, either they are leaders because of whom they know, not who they are. Okay? Go home and think about it later. I don't want to spoil your day today. But because they are dependent and they have been made a leader because of the post they are leaders, they are known as post turtles. The second type of leaders are shooting stars. Those leaders who disappear faster than they appear. But when they appear, they light the entire sky of your imagination. But before you can get hold of them, they're gone. They always exist in the skies, but they never touch base on the earth. Leaders who are celebrities, maybe film stars, or maybe some people that you stick their posters in your home. You stick their posters in their home, but can you ever talk to them? If you fail an exam, will they cry? If you have a problem, will they listen? At least you have a chance talking to Krishna. He will listen. At least you have a chance there. Maybe he may not answer what you say, but he listens. But that's up to him. But I want to tell you that the other leaders are like shooting stars. They are great, celebrity-like. They are there, they power up and light up your imagination, but they don't touch base. The third type of leaders are buzzing bees. Buzzing bees, they're always buzzing around you and with you and around you, and they're always there. But the bees always sit on the flower to take and not to give. Do they ever think of sharing the honey they make from the flowers? So they only come in times of, you fill the gap. I don't want to say it. But those leaders are there who want to take something from you and not give. They are known as buzzing bees. But the fourth type of leaders are like the lotus, the mud lotuses. But just by being the presence of that mud lotus, the pond's beauty is enhanced. They grow in the mud, they live with us, but they live above us. They are with us but untouched by us. They stand there and inspire us. They lend their beauty and give it to us. Such leaders are those who enhance their environment. So of the four, the post turtles, the buzzing bees, the shooting stars, and the mud lotuses. What Krishna has taught us, that he enhanced the entire environment and the camp of Pandavas in every time of its need. He served, and he served it in a way which was so different. So it's very important that we understand first that the first message that Lord Krishna gives us is he is nonetheless leader, even if there's nobody there. And even if you find that, something that he has done may not be there, but it's important that you don't need a title to be a leader. You may not even have enough resources, you can still be a leader. One contemporary example I'll give and we'll move on. There was a woman, her name was Barbara Stammer in the US. She was just engaged with somebody she loved, and the boy broke off the engagement. She went into a depression. She was striving to be a school teacher, but the times became so difficult that she fell off. She enlisted herself in every ad that she wanted a job, whatever a job that she could do. What happened? One man who was just opening up new restaurants, his name was Bobby Merritt. And when he was opening a new restaurant, he wanted the cheapest employee he could get. So his first employee he picked for this lady, her name Barbara Stammer. So he picked him, very low level wage, and together they started and opened up a restaurant. Slowly, this woman, she had high energy. She did everything from dress to dressing food, to plates, to taking care of waiters, to teaching and things. She became a trainer and everything. She didn't have a title. She was just working, everything. You have some people like that in your profession who just work and everybody needs them. So she was working like that, and she continued working. After 20 years, this Bobby Merritt, he decided that the entire system that he had created needed a corporate structure. And in a very simple meeting where everybody had gathered, he came out and said, from today onwards, we will appoint Barbara Stammer as the president of Sonic restaurant chain. And you know what Sonic restaurant chain at that moment was? It had a chain of 130 restaurants, 160 million revenues, and an employee base of 5,500. Till then, she worked without a title, and she got a title when the company had already succeeded. If you think that you succeed because of a title, nope. The title has a meaning because of your success. So don't be stuck. When you start work, don't be moody about people not giving you the first preference or second preference. આપણે તો લગ્નની કંકોત્રીમાં નામ મોડું હોય ને તો દુખી થઈ જાય લે. અરે ભાઈ શું ટાઇટલ લગ્ન બીજાના છે. Why are you so high up? You know, I'm just trying to tell you, we are so narrow-minded that we can't come out of this box. Krishna has told us that you can be a leader without a title or resources, nonetheless leader. We have a Sadguru saint whom I really deeply adore. His name is Tyag Vallabh Swami. No ordinary saint. He was born and raised in Africa. One of the most sharply intelligent persons that I know. Very good English, very good knowledge of scriptures, very, very service-oriented, seva-bhavi, very peaceful. His age is almost 70 now. Despite the fact he could do everything, Yogiji Maharaj, Pramukh Swami's guru, asked him to work in the kitchen. You know, work in the kitchen. So he was just preparing food for people, 10 people, 20 people. Slowly, slowly, his ability was fantastic. He became in charge of preparing food for almost 200,000 people without a wrinkle of worry. આપણે તો બે જમવા આવવાના હોય, fussing and running and એમાં કેટલું drop કરી દે. એમાં જો પુરુષોએ આ વ્યવસ્થા કરવાની હોય, if men have to do this, they can't find even a matchbox. And they complain about everything. But anyway, that's another story. Tyag Vallabh Swami, slowly, he started preparing food for 200,000 people. But every time, he's the head of the kitchen, but when us young sadhus, he's 70, and we are maybe now, you know, at that time we were maybe 25, 30, he would come down and serve food to us. Tyag Vallabh Swami. And once we asked him a question. I said, Swami, what is the most happiest moment of your life? Wait for it. What is the most happiest moment? Do you know what he told me? And some of the young sadhus who were with us. He said, you know, after preparing all the food for thousands of people, when I come into the kitchen to serve food, and I know there are maybe 20, 30, 40 sadhus eating, and there are other 6 sadhus who are supposed to serve with me, because one man cannot serve everything. When I come into the kitchen and I find out that all the other 6 sadhus are no longer there, meaning nobody else to help me to serve, and I have to serve everybody alone, I am the happiest moment of my life. No resources, you are still a leader. No title, you are still a leader. If you can make a difference to the situation you walk into, you are a leader. Go home and there's a problem, and if you can make a difference, if you aggravate the situation, you're not. If you can make a positive difference to any situation, whether you're waiting on the bus and the bus has left and all the passengers outside are swearing and hurting, if you can change that mood, you're a leader. But if you join the bandwagon and say, yeah, what will you achieve? Everybody swears at the weather, but can you change it? Accept it. Most important. So I am trying to tell you that there are leaders who don't care about titles, who don't care about resources, but make a difference with themselves and what they have. Krishna teaches us that. The second thing which I believe, which is most important, first is nonetheless leadership. The second thing which all of us should take home is I'm not comfortable with the word Krishna's leadership, because I believe that he has shown us a way that a leader is he who serves, not a leader is he who leads. So Krishna, throughout the whole of his life, has not led people, but he has served people, and through service he has led people. So I would coin a new word for your management people. If you accept it, fine. If you don't, the trash cans are full with good ideas. But I would suggest that rather than saying Krishna's leadership, we should say Krishna's servership. This idea of servership would change the way you think about leadership. In 1970, one thinker, his name, Robert Greenleaf, he invented the word of servant leadership. He invented this word of servant leadership where the leader serves. But in America, when such ideas came up that, a leader should serve, they started getting a bit fearful, saying then the leader would become a slave, and what would we have? You know what I mean? Majority policy decisions are first talked about the world, then everybody, then themselves. So they started thinking that if the leader has to serve all his life, then what joy does he get? But here Krishna teaches, it is his servership that makes the difference than other leaders. You know how? You would never expect. Just as in Rajasuya Yagna, Lord Krishna picked up the dishes and he cleaned everything. You'll never expect Julius Caesar doing that, right? You'll never expect Alexander the Great doing that. No, they led in a different way. Here, Krishna's servership means that just as Bhagavan Swaminarayan had said one same similar thing in his Vachanamritam, that I believe that I am the servant of the devotees. And any person who attains any greatness and he does not have this virtue of serving others, that greatness will not last. So for 5,000 years we admire and adore Lord Krishna because of his servership. Do you know how? When Arjun, now let's quickly take examples. When Arjun, he had all got ready, full of armor, he told Krishna, take my chariot in the middle of the battlefield, and then he starts shaking. He doesn't want to fight. He's fully geared to fight, and he tells Krishna, do you know what he says? Siddhanti mama gatrani, mukham cha parishusyati, vepathuscha sharire me, roma harshascha jayate, gandivam shanshtatat haste. He says that in my hand the bow is slipping away. He also says, tvakcha paridahyate, my skin is burning. Arjun tells that my hands are trembling, my mouth is dry, my hair is standing on its end. I find it difficult to stand, and he says, Brahmativa cha me manaha, my mind is spinning. He lays down his bow and arrow and he starts crying. In the second adhyay, and in the second adhyay, the second or third slok, Krishna and Arjun, and Krishna sees Arjun in a very miserable force. He sees him that he's crying, and they use a word which is very clear, and they say the Ashrupurna Kulekshanam. Seen Arjun with eyes full of tears and bloodshot eyes, and he tells Krishna, I don't want to fight. That's in the second adhyay. Then you go fast forward to the 18th adhyay. In the 18th adhyay, from crying Arjun, what do you get? Brahma bhuta prasannatma na sochati na kankshati. The power of transformation of Krishna in just 18 adhyayas. A crying, forsaken, depressed Arjun rises to fight and win the war. So he helped Arjun at the most critical moment. And he didn't do it like the normal, physiotherapist would do. He said, oh, your hands are shaking, so let me massage them. Your mouth is dry, here's a glass of water. Oh, your mind is spinning, hold on to something. Your skin is burning, oh, we've got some wonderful lotions for burning skin. No. He doesn't do it the way that a normal person would do it. Krishna talks to Arjun and says, Klebhyam masma gamaha partha nei tvaitat upapadyate. Shudram radaya dorbalyam tyaktva tishtha parantapa. Get rid of this cowardice of your heart. Get up and fight. Parantapa meaning the defeater of enemies. At that time when he's depressed, if some Indian cricket batsman is really struggling against a bowler, and then you can't say hit sixes, You need to just get him geared up. Krishna tells Arjun and Arjun rises. So fast. At every critical moment in Mahabharata, Krishna leads by serving. He serves Arjun to make him whole again. In the case of Draupadi, when her dignity is about to be lost, when all the Pandavas are crestfallen, all the Kauravas, they are about to do something, Krishna fills her clothes and saves the dignity of Draupadi. He serves Draupadi. Nobody's too big, nobody's too small. But the climax way, which really touches me, is there are things that which you or me cannot imagine, which Krishna does. Once again I want to take you to the moment before war. And in the moments before war, when it has been decided there is going to be a war, Krishna tells Yudhishthira that give me one more chance, that let me go as a peacemaker, negotiate with the Kauravas. Initially the Pandavas say it was of no use, fruitless. Krishna said, let me try. He doesn't go on his own. You know what he does? Which most negotiators fail to do. He goes for individual opinions. He meets Yudhishthira on his own. He said, Yudhishthira, I'm going. What's your offer? Yudhishthira says, we want peace. Yudhishthira says that we want peace. You tell them, if they don't want to give me my kingdom, or even half of it, give me 5 villages. Ultimately, give us something and we will make sure that we want peace. But Krishna, try for peace. Okay? He goes to Arjun, the mighty warrior. He also begs Krishna, Krishna, try for peace. Bhim, you will be surprised. Bhim, who is the uproarious, who always wants, drinking that and this, nothing normal. He tells Krishna that please try for peace. Then you get Sahadev, who speaks very little. He tells Krishna, you are not going for peace. Come back with the news of war. Imagine, you expect Sahadev to say, bring peace, and he says, I want war. He looks to Draupadi, and Draupadi said, Krishna, when you walk into that darbar, think of my hair. I just want war. She starts criticizing all the other Pandavas and saying, my God, for so many years that we've been fighting for war, and here when the time has come. So Draupadi says war. Sahadev says war. Okay? Bhim, Arjun, and Yudhishthira say peace. Satyaki, he says to Krishna, we want war. So 3 against 3. Like India, hung house. You always have a hung parliament, right? So 3 against 3. And then Krishna approaches Nakul. And Nakul says, Krishna, I respect your views, so I know what you will do will be the best for us. So he doesn't go either way. Krishna goes with a message of half war, half peace, and half hanging. Imagine. આપણે તો મૂકી દઈએ. આપણે કે નક્કી કરો પછી આવો ખમા. It's your war. Let's put it this way, but no. Lord Krishna, he goes. Then he talks. To that extent, they also try to capture him. And you know all the story. I don't want to go into the story. But even when the talks fail, when Vidur asks Krishna, now listen what a leader should be. Take home this message, it will solve so many problems even in your personal life. When Vidur asks Krishna that, Krishna, you knew that talks across the border would fail. You knew. Then why are you trying? Why did you try? You knew the answer would be no. Why did you try? You know what Krishna says? To Vidur, it's not in court, it's private conversation. It's not to be publicized. But listen where his heart is. He says, Vidur, I knew that the war is inevitable and the talks would fail. But I did not want Yudhishthira's name to be defamed. The world will know that Yudhishthira tried till the last moment to save it from war. I want the world to know that he tried. The second thing he says is for Duryodhan. Give credit to such a leader, oh my God. He says, Vidur, I know that all his life Duryodhan has been sinning and contemplating a war. But I also believe that if you think of doing wrong, and even at the last moment you don't, then you are free from the guilt of doing wrong. I wanted to give Duryodhan that last chance, that all your life you have been bad. But even now, if you don't do what you have said, you will still be saved and nobody will be able to stick blame on you. He wanted to free the name of Yudhishthir, and he also wanted to free the name of Duryodhan. Then Krishna says the third thing, and Vidur, I also know, that if you set out to do something good, and if it doesn't happen, you still get the reward as if it had happened. So go home, and when you try and make a difference to your home, and even if that peace doesn't come, when you tried, God gives you the reward of trying as if you had succeeded. This is a message that Krishna served in such a way. He served Draupadi. He served Arjun. He served Yudhishthir and also Duryodhan. But not only that, when Arjun was in flurry to cut the head of Jayadrath, which was almost impossible, and they've set up a phalanx after phalanx after phalanx. And Krishna knew that they had to go there before sunset, or Arjun would kill himself, immolate. But in the middle, he found that the horses were hurt. He asked Arjun that, Arjun, the horses need to be fed water. Our horses need to be treated. In the middle of the war, Arjun created a whole fence of arrows. Krishna served the horses. You have God himself serving the Pandavas, serving the horses. In the middle of the war, don't be too busy to serve. If Krishna could serve in the middle of war, then I think our life is not that much busy in order to serve. If you can serve, you're a leader. We must understand that serving others makes you a leader, which decorates the title rather than the title decorating you. It's important. That's what Krishna has told us, and that's what we must know. And when we know this, like I said, in Rajasuya Yagna, you know what was the department of Krishna? When everybody was given a department, somebody the department of kitchen, somebody guest, somebody this. Krishna's department was Padya. That means washing the feet of the guest. Obviously, he must have been the expert in that. Washing the feet of, apne pulling the feet. We bend down to pull. Okay, because Eisenhower told us pull. But no, I'm just trying to tell you that washing the feet meaning doing the lowest of the low seva to become the greatest of great. So I would say the strongest point of Lord Krishna is not his leadership but his servership that has made a leader. Even today, like I gave examples from somewhere in America or some other places, that anybody who serves genuinely, he is a leader who is loved beyond belief. I have spent so much time with Pramukh Swami Maharaj. I can see the way he leads is by serving very clearly. In such a way that in 1995, when we had opened our London temple, the Swaminarayan Mandir in London was big news. You know, when that mandir was opened, like you have an eternal war between England and France, the French newspaper Le Monde, they had headlines, the French newspaper, that the empire strikes back. For 200 years, the British ruled and ruined India, and what a sweet way of taking revenge by putting a beautiful temple in the heart of London. It wasn't a form of revenge, but it was a form of doing something in England. And in England, till now, nobody knew. You know what they wrote in The Guardian? They said, the Hindus are here to stay. Till now, they thought we were there temporary. I'm just trying to tell you, because of the British Raj, But anyway, because this temple was built, first time in the whole of Europe, a traditional Hindu temple out of stone and marble with murtis and pujas. Stunning. Just on the side, I would just like to just share this news with you, and I think it's the right place, the AMA. The temple in London, which Pramukh Swami has created, has served the country and the community so well. The schools and the people so well. From environmental projects to other projects so well that you will all feel proud when I make this announcement. Just recently, we all know that Britain is going to host the Olympics for 2012, World Olympics. The World Olympic Committee came to England and they were looking around, just as you have medals for Olympic, the gold, silver and bronze. The World Olympic Committee was in the process of creating medallions as mementos. And in that, on one side would be the Olympic symbol and the other side, one landmark of England, just selecting 7-8 landmarks. So the World Olympic Committee has already created and published and released 2 years in advance landmark Olympic medallions, okay, in which they have taken the Big Ben, the London Tower Bridge, the Parliament House, but you'll all feel good that they have selected the London Mandir as a landmark for 2012. Why? Because it has served that country, it has served the community where England feels proud of the Mandir. Otherwise, you don't put it on the Olympic medallion. But I am coming back to it when this temple was opened and Pramukh Swami was interviewed by Worldwide Studios, which was being channelized in 350 channels live. Under the dome, I was there as a translator. Swami was sitting very quietly. If anybody's seen Swami, so humble, so gentle. And the guy just asked, I respect and love all the reporters, but still he asked this question out of the blue. He asked that as the guru of millions, what do you see your role as? So I translated that question to Bapa, कि बापा करोड़ों ना गुरु तरीके आप अपनी भूमिका कई रीते जुओ छो. Naturally, without a flicker of hesitation, Pramukh Swami said કે કરોડોના ગુરુ તો ભગવાન એક છે, આપણે તો એમના સેવક છે અને સેવકનો ધર્મ સેવા કરવી એ જ છે. આપણે તો we will dish out all our biodata and I did that and this and I hope to do that. You should just hope to serve. Most important, a leader is he who serves the people even after he has accomplished everything. When at the age of 28, Pramukh Swami was given the presidentship of the institution, on that same evening, he was washing the utensils of the devotees. He had so many devotees, he could have said, Chala, please help wash. He was washing. And when now, after years, we asked him, because we are now modern sadhus. At that time, nobody asked. But we said, Papa, how come you washed utensils at that time? You know what he said? Swami ke pramukh thaye, ele seva kocha mati jaye se. Ye to kayami se. All the titles you get are temporary. The stuff you have is permanent. You can have all the titles, but the stuff you carry within you is permanent. Swami Shri has been constantly telling us it's important. And sometimes it's the seva, the service. Many people ask that why are millions committed to Pramukh Swami? The answer is simple. It is because he is committed to millions. A leader who is loyal, a leader who serves, a leader who gives, a leader who enhances. He is a leader who sits in the heart of the people and he leads from within. And that's most essential. This is what Lord Krishna is doing, that he leads from within and without any selfishness. I remember one incident, it's very private, but I believe AMA, like it's our circle, and I believe that it should be shared here. It was in 1990. I would serve you in the hope that you would at least smile back to me. I'm just saying, I'll serve you at least with the hope that you allow me to serve you. If you're ill and I'm trying to serve you and you say, no, get lost, then I can't serve you. I need some interaction, okay? Keep that in focus while I explore this idea. In 1990, there was a huge assembly in London where more than 5,000 people had gathered. Pramukh Swami was in Colchester. And Swami asked, without telling anybody, 5,000 people are waiting. Swami asked one of the attendants that take 2 cars, take one car for the Thakurji, Hari Krishna Maharaj, take another car, take a set of clothes. Everybody's wondering what's happening. He didn't tell anybody. He just had one driver who was a devotee. He must have told him. Everybody's wondering, is somebody ill? Where are we going? Swami said, take a garland. I'm telling you, nobody in the whole BAPS knew what was happening at that moment. People are phoning that, where is Bapa, Swami, what's happening? He sat in the car, then told that driver, take it to so-and-so place. He had written, he doesn't read English. That driver was worried, so he took that car there. 2 sevaks who were with him, they were watching what's happening. The rest had gone. 5,000 people waiting. And they came to a cemetery. A cemetery, a funeral home. And Swami stopped the car. Swami got out and he sat on a bench. 45 minutes, nobody was there, empty. And then he asked the sadhu to read all the names of the tombstones. So he is listening to, John and this, and all the names. It was a cemetery. Okay? So he, આપણે જેમ કરીએ ને જનમંગલ નામાવલી એમ પઠન કરાયો. So he's saying, okay, read all the names on the tombstone. All the names were read. Then slowly, 2 or 3 cars came with a coffin. When one boy, he came out, he was an Indian, he saw Pramukh Swami, he was shocked. He came and fell at his feet. He said, Swami, you have come? He said, Swami, but how did you come? You know what Pramukh Swami said? 3 days ago, your dad, Jai Krishna, he had phoned me and he had said that it is my wish that I want to meet you before I die. When I found out that he has passed away, I wanted to fulfill that promise of meeting him even after he passed away. Nobody was there. What can a dead man give you? Unless you serve selflessly, you cannot serve to this degree. I'm asking you, leaders must serve selflessly. So first, nonetheless leader. The second, servership. The third that I want to highlight of Lord Krishna's life, that he served selflessly. When you serve, just because you serve, you can't be a leader, because there are peons and low-level people, there are beggars and so many people who serve. They don't naturally become leaders. But if you serve selflessly, you become leader by default. It's important that you serve selflessly. How can you say this is done selfless? So come back to Lord Krishna. Krishna, at the time when Aswathama, he released his Brahmastra to kill, and at that time with his force, he had said that the offsprings of Arjuna would die. So Parikshit, when he was born dead. All the women in that area were crying. They called Krishna. Now listen. They called Krishna and said, please Krishna, that you must bring Parikshit back to life, a little infant who was dead. You know what happened? Krishna stands there. He takes water in his hand. Now look at his sankalpa. He takes water in his hand and he says that if I have not spoken a lie, even casually, if I have not spoken a lie even casually, if I have never run away from the battlefield even once, he did it many times. If I have not run away from the battlefield even once, if I have not spoken a lie, remember Ashwathama Hanayo? Okay, that's how they won. So he says, if I have not spoken a lie even casually, if I have not run away from the battlefield even once, if truth and righteousness forever abide in me, may this dead child, Parikshit, come alive. And my God, he came alive. Now ask yourself, had Krishna never lied? We have a problem here. Houston, we have a problem. Had Krishna never lied? Had Krishna never run away? When he asked that you must fire the arrow on seated Karna, was that dharma? So many questions that people would ask even now. I don't want to go into the katha, but I want to tell you one thing. Has Krishna ever lied for himself? Ask yourself. Has Krishna ever strategized for himself? Here is a leader who may have lied once or twice to protect the larger good. So my answer is very simple, that even if you speak the truth, if it is to promote yourself, it is selfish. Even if you speak a lie, if it is to protect others, it's selfless. Krishna was perhaps the most selfless leader the world has seen. The most selfless. And it's important that we understand this. That's why he was a leader apart. Only a leader who is selfless can give you a vision now. I don't want to talk about a visionary leader who gives you a vision whose vision is not useful to you. Only a selfless leader can give you a true vision. Come back. With all due respect to all the leaders of the world, we all know that Julius Caesar was a great leader. He created the Roman Empire. We all know Alexander the Great was a great leader. He was a visionary leader who wanted everything in his empire. We all know Churchill was a great leader. He was responsible winning the Second World War. We know of great leaders who have created empires and who have created knowledge-based systems. I am not against that. But I want to ask you a question. Were they selfless? Think about it. If their vision was there, you can call them visionary leaders, but would their vision be useful to you and me? Would Julius Caesar's vision be useful to you and me now? Tell me. Would Alexander the Great's vision be useful to you and me? You can learn a trick or two, but vision is not useful. Churchill, who was responsible for winning the Second World War, who was one of the strongest prime ministers that Britain had seen, after the war, the British people voted him out of the prime minister's office. You know why? They said he was a great prime minister for war, but not for peace. In his own time, Churchill's own vision was rejected by his own people whom he had saved. Because if your vision is not selfless, it's not useful. Here is Lord Krishna, whose vision is selfless. You know why? He gave a vision not just to Pandavas, but the entire humanity. Not just to India, but the whole world. He gave a vision. We talked about going beyond a country, rising beyond a race, rising even beyond religion, rising even beyond relatives. Pachi caste system to avid nahi. Rising beyond relatives. He gave a vision that took you beyond your body. He told Arjun, Na hanyate hanyamane sharire. He talked of a vision that took you beyond the body. But the climax is, he talked of a vision of Atma and Paramatma. That you are a pure soul and you have to have devotion to Paramatma. The bhakti of Atma and Paramatma. Krishna gave a vision in the Gita that was as applicable then as it is as applicable now. No leader of the world has been able to give us this spiritual vision. He talked of dharma, and he went to the extent of saying sarva dharman parityajya mamekam sharanam vraja, that I am dharma, righteousness. Please look within you, I am within you. He talked about that, so he has not only led, he did not only protect, he did not only serve, but he left us a vision which will be as powerful as days go on and on and on. But the climax, which I also believe that such visionary people, they never fade. Bhagavan Swaminarayan has said very clearly in his Vachanamrut that there are 4 types of spiritual leaders. The first, he says, that every spiritual leader gives light, enhances the environment. The first is like a lamp, a divo. It burns bright, gives you light, but a little breeze and it blows away. So there are spiritual leaders with a little bit of material pleasures, they disappear. But Bhagavan Swaminathan says the second type of leaders are like the mashal, the torch, that give bright light. Even in a wind, they don't blow away. That's why you have the mashals, the torch. But if it's rainy, the light is quenched and extinguished. So that's difficult. Bhagavan Swaminathan says that the third type of leader are like lightning. They emerge in the middle of water. They exist in the middle of clouds. So they are not extinguished by water, but they exist in the middle of cloud. So they are like lightning. Even a lot of chaos, a lot of turmoil, still such leaders don't fade away. But the fourth leader that Bhagavan Swaminathan has said are the leaders known as Vadvanad Agni. And now science has proven it. They talk about undersea volcanoes. That the fire is within the sea, surrounded by water. And for millions of years, the fire has not died inside the seas. More than 11 miles down, they have just discovered oceanic vents, where volcanic lava is coming out in the sea. And what does that do, Swaminathan Bhagavan says? Such leader, which exist in Maya, they live on this earth, and they have the power to transform even salty water and raise it to the clouds and turn it into sweet water. The biggest power of Lord Krishna would be, even in war, if he could give spiritual knowledge to Arjun, okay, even in war, and give such a clear vision, then the biggest power of Lord Krishna is transformation. If you worship him, you adore him, you take one of his ideal, then that power will be with you throughout, and that will lead to total transformation. Such leaders are much stronger than lightning, or even much stronger than oceanic winds. And it is because of them that we survive. In modern world, it's because of the voters that the leaders survive. Okay? And in the spiritual world, it is because of the leaders that we survive. I'll leave you with a story which is very close to my heart. It's a story from the South Indian tradition of alvars. There were 10 alvars. They were moving from place to place, all friends, samp, loving, bound together. They were following each other, moving from pilgrimage to pilgrimage. Then what happened, that once they were moving from one place to another place, a storm emerged, heavy lightning. The lightning started falling all around them. So they took shelter in a small hut to protect themselves from rain and lightning. But the storm just kept gathering around that hut, and lightning started striking the ground near the hut. So they decided that maybe that one person from us, his end is near. Because of that one bad, vicious person, why should the 9 suffer? So they decided there's a tree right at the end across. One by one of us should go and touch that tree. If it's his time, the lightning will strike him. The storm will be over. The 9 can be saved. So the first person went, so scared, came back running. So he's safe. The second, he went. Now the odds are less. He went and the lightning didn't strike him. So he came back and he was so happy and smiling and safe. The third, the fourth, the fifth, the sixth had to be pushed out. Because now the options are just 4. He had to be pushed out. He went and came back perspiring, not wet because of the rain, but perspiration. The 7th had to be dragged out. It's your turn. The 8th. And when the 9th went, he was almost faint. But when he went and he came back, only one guy left. So the 10th refused to go out. So everybody said, no, all of us have gone. You have to go. If it's your time, it's done. We will be saved. He said, no, please don't send me. Don't send me. They pushed him out. When he reached the tree, the lightning fell on the hut. It is because of that one person the 9 were living. It is because of leaders like Krishna we are intact and alive today. So we must understand that such leaders are different. They give us life. Krishna and leaders, they don't just control our moments, they control life. And I would just like to end with one last prayer. I remember the security officer, the African American, who told me that it's pretty cool. I want to come back on this earth again and again. But I bet he didn't know that in the 4th Adhyay, Krishna says, Yada yada hi dharmasya glanir bhavati bharata dharma sansthapanarthaya sambhavami yuge yuge. We have a God who has promised that I will come back on this earth again and again and again to save all of us. I think we will never get a leader of such caliber ever again. Thank you very much.